when 6-year-old Emma Flores pressed both palms flat against the rear window of a moving sedan at the Route 78 toll plaza outside Newark, New Jersey, on a gray Tuesday afternoon in late September, and locked eyes with toll booth operator Vincent Ray Santiago through 2 layers of glass. The desperate way her small hands splayed wide and the silent scream forming on her lips made Vincent do something he'd never done in 14 years working that booth. He wrote down the license plate, called it in to state police, and then did something even more unusual. He stepped out of his booth, walked to the plaza supervisor's office, and refused to go back to work until someone confirmed they were looking for that car. What Vincent didn't know was that Emma had been missing from a playground in Hoboken for nearly 5 hours, that her frantic mother had been searching with police since noon, that the woman driving that sedan had no legal right to have Emma in her vehicle, and that Vincent's decision to trust what he saw through glass would set off a coordinated response across 3 counties that would end with a roadblock, a arrest, and a little girl going home to her mother instead of disappearing into a custody battle that had already turned dangerous. The Garden State Parkway toll plaza at exit 142 processed roughly 40,000 vehicles on an average weekday. Vincent Santiago had worked Booth 7 for the past 14 years, ever since he had retired from the Newark Fire Department at 52 after a warehouse collapse left him with a back injury that ended his career, but not his need to be useful. He was 66 now, a compact man with steel gray hair cut military short, reading glasses that hung on a chain around his neck, and the kind of weathered dignity that came from decades of public service. His booth faced westbound traffic coming off the parkway, and he'd seen everything. Road rage incidents, medical emergencies, people trying to pay tolls with anything from seashells to iOS, couples arguing, kids crying, drivers so exhausted they could barely stay awake. He'd learned to process transactions efficiently, to be polite but brief, to keep traffic moving. He'd also learned that most of what happened in the cars passing through his booth wasn't his business. But sometimes, something made you look twice. It was 3:47 in the afternoon when the silver Honda Accord pulled up to his window. The driver was a woman in her 40s, dark hair pulled back tight, sunglasses even though the day was overcast, her mouth set in a hard line. She handed Vincent a $20 bill for the toll without making eye contact, her fingers drumming impatiently on the steering wheel. Vincent was reaching for her change when he noticed the child in the back seat, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with long, dark hair and a purple jacket, sitting directly behind the driver. The girl's face was pressed close to the rear passenger window, and her eyes were fixed on Vincent with an intensity that made him pause. Most kids in back seats were looking at phones or tablets, arguing with siblings, or staring into space with that glazed boredom children get on car trips. This girl was staring at Vincent like he was the only person in the world who could help her. Then she pressed both hands flat against the window, palm prints spreading on the glass. Her mouth opened, and Vincent could see her forming words he couldn't hear through the closed window and the ambient noise of the toll plaza. Her small face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen like she'd been crying for a long time. The way she was looking at him wasn't curiosity or boredom, it was desperation. It was a plea. Vincent's hand stopped halfway to giving the driver her change. He looked at the woman, who was still staring straight ahead, then back at the girl. The child was shaking her head now, small, frantic movements, her hands still pressed against the glass. Vincent had grandchildren. He knew what kids looked like when they were scared, when they were playing, when they were testing boundaries. This wasn't a game. This was genuine fear. The driver's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and impatient. "Can I get my change, please? I'm in a hurry." Vincent looked at her, then back at the girl. The child had started pounding on the window now, both small fists hitting the glass with thuds Vincent could hear even over the traffic noise. The woman's head whipped around toward the back seat, and she said something Vincent couldn't make out, her face twisted with anger. The girl immediately stopped pounding and shrank back into her seat, her hands dropping to her lap, her head lowering in that automatic compliance that comes from fear of consequences. That reaction, that instant obedience born from intimidation, made Vincent's decision for him. He handed the woman her change through the window, his movements deliberately slow, his eyes memorizing details. Silver Honda Accord, New Jersey plates. He caught the plate number as she drove away, repeating it silently to cement it in memory. Delta, Papa 7, 3, Mike Quebec 2. The car merged into traffic and disappeared down the parkway, and Vincent stood in his booth with his heart hammering against his ribs. He could be wrong. The girl could have been throwing a tantrum. The woman could have been a frustrated parent dealing with a difficult child. Kids acted out. Parents got impatient. It happened every day in thousands of cars passing through this plaza. But Vincent had seen something in that girl's eyes that he couldn't ignore. He'd spent 26 years as a firefighter learning to read situations quickly, to trust his gut when something felt wrong, to act when hesitation could cost lives. And every instinct he had was screaming that something was very wrong with that little girl in the back of that Honda. He picked up the phone in his booth and called the plaza supervisor's office. "This is Vincent in booth 7. I need to report something. I just processed a vehicle. Silver Honda Accord, New Jersey plates, Delta Papa 7-3, Mike Quebec 2, westbound off the Parkway. There was a child in the back seat, young girl, maybe 6 or 7, and she was pounding on the window trying to get my attention. The way the driver reacted when the kid tried to signal me, the way the kid immediately stopped and looked terrified. Something's not right. I think someone needs to check on that vehicle." The supervisor's voice came back skeptical and tired. "Vincent, we process 40,000 cars a day. Kids act up in cars all the time. Did you see any obvious signs of abuse or immediate danger? No visible injuries, but the child was clearly distressed and trying to signal for help. The way she looked at me, the way she reacted when the driver snapped at her. I've been doing this job for 14 years, and I'm telling you something was wrong." The supervisor sighed. "I'll note it in the log, but without clear evidence of a crime in progress, state police aren't going to initiate a pursuit based on a child being upset in a car." Vincent felt frustration rising in his chest. That little girl needed help, and he was the only person who'd seen her. And now she was gone, driving away down the parkway toward wherever that woman was taking her. "Listen," Vincent said, his voice hardening with the authority he'd once used to command firefighters in burning buildings. "I'm stepping out of my booth right now. I'm coming to your office. You can call state police or I can call them myself. But someone is going to follow up on this because I'm not going back to work until they do. Do you understand me?" There was a pause. Then the supervisor's voice came back, resigned but cooperative. "Come to the office. I'll call it in." Vincent locked his booth, hung the lane closed sign, and walked across the plaza to the supervisor's trailer. Inside, Supervisor Dennis Morton was already on the phone with New Jersey State Police, relaying the plate number and description. Vincent stood by the desk, his arms crossed, listening. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speakerphone, professional but cautious. "We'll run the plate and see what comes back. Can you provide more details about the observed behavior?" Morton looked at Vincent, who leaned toward the speaker. "This is Vincent Santiago, toll booth operator who observed the vehicle. The child in the rear seat was pressing her hands against the window and appeared to be trying to communicate with me. She was visibly crying, and when she began pounding on the glass, the driver turned and spoke to her in what appeared to be an aggressive manner. The child immediately ceased all movement and appeared frightened. The driver's behavior suggested she was attempting to prevent the child from attracting attention. Based on my experience, this was not normal parent-child interaction. It was a child in distress attempting to signal for help. There was typing on the other end of the line. Then the dispatcher came back with a different tone. "Stand by. The plate is coming back registered to a 2019 Honda Accord owned by Patricia Ann Brennan, age 43, last known address in Toms River. Vehicle and owner have no active warrants, but there's a flag in the system. Brennan is involved in an active Amber Alert issued out of Hudson County at 1:15 this afternoon for a missing 6-year-old girl, Emma Flores, last seen at a playground in Hoboken. Suspect description matches registered owner. We're upgrading this to a confirmed sighting. What's your location and which direction was the vehicle traveling?" Vincent's stomach dropped. An Amber Alert. That little girl pounding on his window was a kidnapped child, and he'd just watched her drive away. Morton was already responding to the dispatcher. Vehicle exited the parkway at Toll Plaza 142, headed westbound toward Route 78 approximately 8 minutes ago. Dispatcher's voice sharpened with urgency. All units, we have confirmed sighting of Amber Alert vehicle, silver Honda Accord New Jersey plates, Delta Papa 73, Mike Quebec 2, last seen westbound from Parkway exit 142 toward Route 78. Suspect is Patricia Brennan, age 43. Victim is Emma Flores, age 6. Vehicle is approximately 8 minutes ahead. Units in Morris, Union, and Somerset counties begin coordinated containment. We need roadblocks and aerial if available. Vincent listened to the radio chatter escalating, heard units responding, heard the machinery of law enforcement mobilizing, and felt both relief that he'd been right to call it in and sick dread that he'd let that car drive away. If he'd done something more, if he'd stalled the transaction, if he'd physically blocked the lane, maybe that little girl would be safe right now instead of still in that car with a woman who had no right to have her. Morton seemed to read his thoughts. You did the right thing, Vincent. You saw something wrong. You reported it. You pushed until we took it seriously. That's all you could do. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Most people wouldn't have cared enough to make the call. Vincent nodded but didn't feel reassured. He'd noticed, he'd called, and now all he could do was wait while state police tried to find a silver Honda somewhere on the roads of central New Jersey carrying a terrified 6-year-old who'd tried to ask him for help through glass. The command center coordinated the response from state police headquarters in West Trenton, and within 12 minutes of Vincent's call, they had units positioned at strategic points along Route 78 and Interstate 287. They had the vehicle description, the plate number, and a narrow window of time and distance. The Honda had roughly a 10-minute head start, but it was limited to certain routes if the driver was trying to avoid detection. Helicopter support was dispatched from the northern barracks, and within 20 minutes, the bird was in the air scanning westbound traffic. At 4:23 p.m., a state trooper spotted the silver Honda on Route 78 near Clinton and radioed position. The vehicle was maintaining normal speed, staying in the right lane, trying to blend in with commuter traffic. The command decision was made quickly. They would not pursue and risk a high-speed chase with a child in the vehicle. Instead, they would set up a roadblock at the next logical exit and funnel traffic through a controlled checkpoint. At exit 17 off Route 78, 6 state police cruisers blocked the exit ramp, creating a mandatory stop point where every vehicle was being checked. Officers were inspecting each car, verifying occupants, looking for the silver Honda. At 4:31 p.m., the Honda Accord approached the exit. The driver, Patricia Brennan, had no choice. Traffic was being diverted off the highway, and attempting to continue would have been conspicuous. She took the exit and joined the line of cars being processed through the checkpoint. In the back seat, Emma Flores was sitting very still, her hands in her lap, her eyes tracking the police cars and officers with desperate hope. She'd been told repeatedly by the woman driving that if she made noise, if she tried to get attention, if she caused problems, her mother would be hurt. She'd been told that this was all supposed to be a secret, that they were going somewhere special, that her mother had agreed to it. But Emma knew her mother hadn't agreed. Emma knew she'd been taken from the playground where she was supposed to wait for her mother to finish grocery shopping. Emma knew the woman driving had grabbed her and said there was an emergency and they had to leave right now. And Emma had been scared for 5 hours, trapped in this car, trying to figure out how to get help. When the Honda reached the checkpoint, a state trooper approached the driver's window. "License and registration, please." Patricia Brennan handed over her documents with a calm smile that didn't reach her eyes. The trooper examined the license, compared the photo to the woman's face, and asked without looking up, "Where are you headed today, ma'am?" "Just taking my niece to visit family in Pennsylvania." The trooper's eyes shifted to the back seat where Emma sat frozen. "And what's your name, sweetie?" Emma's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Patricia Brennan turned in her seat and said quickly, "Her name is Emma. She's shy around strangers. We've been driving a while and she's tired." The trooper's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. He stepped back from the window and spoke into his radio, keeping his eyes on the vehicle. The response was immediate. 2 more troopers approached, flanking the car. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle, please." Patricia Brennan's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "What's this about? I haven't done anything wrong." "Ma'am, turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle now." One of the flanking troopers opened the rear door on Emma's side while another kept position on the driver. The trooper knelt down beside Emma and spoke gently. "Hi, Emma. My name is Officer Ramirez. You're safe now, okay? We're going to get you back to your mom." Emma Flores started crying, not quiet tears, but huge racking sobs of relief and terror and exhaustion. Officer Ramirez unbuckled her seatbelt and lifted her out of the car, carrying her away from the Honda toward a police SUV where a victim advocate was waiting with a blanket and juice and kind words. Behind them, Patricia Brennan was being placed in handcuffs while insisting this was all a misunderstanding, that she had permission, that Emma's mother had agreed, that this was about custody arrangements, and nobody understood. The troopers weren't listening. They'd heard those excuses before. They had an Amber Alert child safe in custody and a suspect in handcuffs, and that was all that mattered right now. Within minutes, Emma's mother, Rosa Flores, received the call she'd been praying for since discovering her daughter missing from the playground 5 hours earlier. "We have Emma. She's safe. She's unharmed. We're bringing her to the state police barracks in Clinton. You can meet her there." Rosa collapsed in her kitchen, sobbing into the phone, thanking God and the police and whoever had seen her baby and called it in. At the Clinton State Police Barracks, Emma sat wrapped in a blanket in a child-friendly interview room decorated with soft colors and toys meant to make traumatized children feel safer. A victim advocate named Lauren stayed with her, offering snacks and juice, letting Emma talk or not talk as she needed. Emma was exhausted, her face blotchy from crying, her purple jacket still zipped up tight even though the room was warm. She kept asking when her mom was coming, whether her mom was okay, whether the woman who took her had been lying about her mom being hurt. Lauren reassured her gently, over and over, that her mother was perfectly fine and was driving there right now to get her, that she'd be there very soon, that Emma was completely safe. In another room, detectives were interviewing Patricia Brennan, who was alternating between defiant justification and tearful insistence that she'd had good intentions. The story that emerged was complicated and sad in the way that custody battles often were, but it didn't change the fact that she'd committed a crime. Patricia Brennan was the aunt of Emma's father, who'd lost custody of Emma 2 years earlier due to substance abuse issues and had been fighting through the courts to regain visitation rights. Patricia had convinced herself that Rosa Flores was an unfit mother, that Emma was being neglected, that the family had a right to take Emma somewhere safe until the court sorted everything out properly. She'd been watching the playground for weeks, waiting for an opportunity. And when Rosa went into the grocery store and left Emma playing in the adjacent park with instructions to stay visible and wait, Patricia had seized her chance. She'd told Emma there was an emergency, that her mother had been in an accident, that she needed to come right away. Emma, trained like most children to trust adults in emergencies, had gone with her. And for 5 hours, Patricia had been driving west with no clear plan beyond getting far enough away that she could contact family members who might help her hide Emma, until she could prove to someone that this was all for Emma's own good. The detectives documented everything, building the case that would ensure Patricia Brennan faced serious charges for kidnapping, child endangerment, and custodial interference. But right now, the priority was getting Emma back to her mother. Rosa Flores arrived at the barracks at 5:18 p.m., barely an hour after the roadblock had stopped the Honda. She'd driven from Hoboken with her hands shaking on the wheel, alternating between prayers of gratitude and terror that something would go wrong before she could hold her daughter again. When the trooper at the front desk directed her to the interview room and opened the door, Emma looked up from the coloring book Lauren had given her. For a fraction of a second, the little girl's face showed disbelief, as if she couldn't trust that her mother was really there. Then she screamed "Mommy" and launched herself across the room into Rosa's arms. Rosa caught her daughter and sank to her knees, holding Emma so tightly the victim advocate briefly worried about the child's ability to breathe. But Emma was clinging just as hard, her small arms wrapped around her mother's neck, her face buried in Rosa's shoulder, her whole body shaking with sobs. Rosa was crying too, rocking Emma back and forth, murmuring in Spanish and English, "Thank you, God, my baby. You're safe. I've got you. I'm never letting go. You're safe now." The troopers and staff who witnessed the reunion had to look away. There was something almost too intimate about that kind of relief, that kind of love, that kind of desperate gratitude. It was the sound of a mother getting her child back from the edge of the worst nightmare a parent could imagine. They stayed like that for long minutes until Emma finally pulled back enough to look at her mother's face. "Mommy, I tried to get help. I tried to tell people. There was a man at the toll booth and I put my hands on the window and I tried to tell him she wasn't supposed to have me, but I don't know if he saw me." Rosa cupped her daughter's face in her hands. "Baby, someone saw you. Someone called the police. That's how they found you. Someone was paying attention and they helped you." Emma's eyes widened. "The man at the toll booth? He helped me. He saw me." The state trooper who'd been coordinating with the victim advocate stepped forward. "We believe so, Emma. A toll booth operator at the Parkway Plaza reported seeing a little girl in distress in a silver Honda. He wrote down the license plate and called it in. That's what started everything that led to us finding you. He saw you and he made sure we knew something was wrong." Emma started crying again, but softer now, with relief instead of fear. "I thought nobody saw me. I thought I was invisible." Later that evening, after Emma had been medically evaluated, after she'd given her statement with her mother present and a child psychologist guiding the conversation, after the initial crisis had settled into the slower process of investigation and prosecution, Detective Sarah Chen called the Parkway Plaza and asked to speak with Vincent Santiago. Vincent had stayed late at work, unable to leave without knowing whether the little girl had been found, whether his call had mattered. When he picked up the phone and heard that Emma Flores was safe, that she was with her mother, that the suspect was in custody, he had to sit down. His hands were shaking. "Mr. Santiago," Detective Chen said, "I want you to know that your call directly led to this child being recovered. If you hadn't reported what you saw, if you hadn't written down that plate number and insisted we follow up, Emma Flores would likely be in another state by now and we'd be looking at a very different outcome. You saved that little girl's life today." Vincent's voice was rough when he responded. "I just did what anyone should do. I saw a kid who needed help." Detective Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Santiago, most people don't do what you did. Most people look away, assume it's not their business, convince themselves they're overreacting. You paid attention, you trusted your instincts, and you wouldn't let it go even when it would have been easier to just process the next car and forget about it. That's not what anyone does. That's what a hero does." Vincent didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a 66-year-old toll booth operator who'd seen a scared kid and made a phone call. But if that phone call meant Emma was home with her mother instead of missing, then he'd do it again 1,000 times. 2 weeks later, Vincent was working his regular shift at Booth 7 when a supervisor called down and said he had visitors. He looked up to see Detective Chen walking across the plaza with a woman and a little girl. He recognized the child immediately, even though she looked completely different now. No tears, no fear, just a small girl in jeans and a pink sweater holding her mother's hand. They approached his booth and Vincent stepped out to meet them. Rosa Flores was crying before she even spoke. "Mr. Santiago, I'm Rosa, Emma's mother, and this is my daughter Emma. We came to thank you for saving her life." Vincent knelt down to Emma's level. "Hi, Emma, I'm really glad you're okay." Emma looked at him with those same dark eyes that had stared at him through car window glass 2 weeks ago, but now they were bright with life instead of shadowed with terror. "You saw me," she said simply. "I tried to tell lots of people, but nobody else saw me. But you did." Vincent felt his throat tighten. "You were very brave, Emma. You kept trying to get help even when it was scary. That took a lot of courage." Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Vincent carefully. "I drew you a picture. It's you in your toll booth and me in the car, and you have a phone because you called the police to help me." Vincent unfolded the drawing. It was done in crayon with the meticulous detail that 6-year-olds put into things that matter to them. A stick figure man in a booth with a telephone, a car with a little girl in the back seat with her hands on the window, and above it all, a big yellow sun and the words, "Thank you, Mr. Vincent," in uneven letters. Vincent's eyes were burning. "This is the best picture I've ever seen, Emma. I'm going to keep it forever." Rosa stepped forward and hugged Vincent, this stranger who'd seen her daughter's distress through glass and refused to look away. "You gave me back my baby," she said through tears. "How do I thank you for that?" "You don't," Vincent said quietly. "You just love her and keep her safe, and teach her that asking for help works, that there are people watching who will act if she signals, that she's never completely alone even when she feels like it." Over the following months, Vincent's story spread. The New Jersey State Police featured him in their public awareness campaign about recognizing signs of child abduction and trafficking. Local news ran segments about the toll booth operator who trusted his instincts. The Parkway Authority gave him a commendation. But Vincent didn't want recognition. He wanted people to understand the simple truth that had guided his decision that afternoon. When a child is trying to tell you something is wrong, you listen. When your gut says something doesn't fit, you pay attention. When someone vulnerable needs help, you act. Even if you might be wrong, even if it's inconvenient, even if it means causing a scene or looking foolish. Because the alternative, the cost of looking away, was a 6-year-old girl disappearing instead of going home. Emma Flores started 2nd grade that fall with her mother walking her to school every morning and picking her up every afternoon. The kidnapping had left marks, nightmares, and anxiety about being separated from her mother, a new wariness around strangers. But she was in therapy. She was healing. And she was learning that the world contained both people who would hurt children and people who would protect them, and that knowing the difference and asking the right people for help was a skill that could save your life. Rosa framed the picture Emma had drawn for Vincent and hung it in their kitchen as a reminder that their family had been broken apart and put back together by one person's willingness to see a child in distress and refuse to ignore it. Patricia Brennan was convicted of 2nd-degree kidnapping and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Her defense attorney argued for leniency based on her sincere belief that she was acting in Emma's best interest, but the judge was unmoved. Belief in good intentions did not excuse terrorizing a child, did not justify ignoring the law, did not make kidnapping acceptable. Emma's father, after the conviction of his aunt and the revelation of what his family had attempted, voluntarily terminated his own custody case and entered a long-term treatment program. He sent Rosa a letter apologizing for the pain his family had caused and asking only that when Emma was old enough to understand, she be told that he loved her but recognized he wasn't capable of being the father she deserved. Rosa kept the letter. Someday she'd share it with Emma, but not yet. Right now, Emma needed safety and stability and the knowledge that her mother would never let anyone take her again. Vincent Santiago continued working Booth 7 at the Parkway Toll Plaza. He was 68 now, planning to retire in another year, looking forward to spending more time with his grandchildren and maybe doing some volunteer work with the fire department's community outreach program. But every day at work, he watched the faces in the cars passing through his lane. He looked for the subtle signs that something wasn't right, for children who seemed too quiet or too watchful, for adults whose reactions didn't match their circumstances. He'd been trained by his years as a firefighter to notice when things were off, and that training had saved Emma Flores. He wouldn't stop looking just because he was getting older, or because most days nothing was wrong. Because the days when something was wrong were the days that mattered most. The story of Emma and the toll booth became something parents in New Jersey told their children. It became a case study in law enforcement training about the value of civilian reporting. It became a reminder that public-facing workers, the toll collectors and cashiers and bus drivers and crossing guards who see thousands of people every day, are often the first line of defense for children who are being moved against their will. Patricia Brennan had counted on anonymity, on blending into the 40,000 daily transactions at that toll plaza, on nobody caring enough about one upset child to do anything about it. She hadn't counted on Vincent Santiago being the operator in Booth 7 that afternoon. She hadn't counted on someone who still had the instincts of a first responder, who still believed that protecting vulnerable people was worth the inconvenience, who still trusted that gut feeling that something was wrong. 3 years after the kidnapping, on Emma's 9th birthday, Rosa and Emma visited Vincent at the toll plaza again. Emma was taller now, more confident, wearing a shirt she'd designed herself that said, "Trust your instincts," in bold letters. She'd started speaking at her school about stranger danger and what to do if you feel unsafe, about how she'd tried to signal for help and how Mr. Vincent had seen her when everyone else looked away. She told Vincent that she wanted to be a police officer when she grew up, someone who helped kids who were scared like she'd been scared. Vincent told her she'd make an excellent officer because she already understood the most important part of the job, paying attention to people who needed help and refusing to give up until they were safe. Rosa gave Vincent a framed photograph of Emma, not the scared child from 3 years ago, but the thriving 9-year-old standing in front of him now, smiling and whole and loved. On the back, she'd written, "Because one person saw, because one person acted, because one person cared. Thank you for giving me my daughter back." Vincent hung the photo in his booth where he could see it while he worked, a reminder of why vigilance mattered, why trusting your instincts mattered, why being willing to cause an inconvenience or look foolish mattered if there was even a chance someone needed help. The truth was simple and profound. One person paying attention could change everything. One person writing down a license plate could save a life. One person refusing to look away when a child was in distress could mean the difference between a family reunited and a child lost forever. Vincent Santiago had been that person for Emma Flores, but the lesson extended far beyond one toll booth operator and one kidnapped girl. It was about all of us, about every person who sees something that doesn't feel right and has to make the choice between convenience and conscience, between minding your own business and speaking up, between assuming someone else will handle it and being the someone who handles it yourself. Emma Flores went home that September afternoon because Vincent Santiago chose to see her, to believe her silent plea, to write down 7 letters and numbers, and to refuse to let it go until someone took him seriously. That choice, that moment of attention and action, rippled forward through Emma's entire life. It meant she got to grow up with her mother, got to go to school and make friends and have birthday parties and learn and grow and become whoever she was meant to be. It meant Rosa got to raise her daughter instead of spending years searching for her or grieving her loss. It meant a community learned that paying attention saves lives, that children in danger need adults who will act, and that the most ordinary people in the most ordinary jobs can be heroes when they choose to care about strangers who need them. If you've ever noticed something that felt wrong in a public place, if you've ever wondered whether you should speak up or mind your own business, if you've ever taught a child that asking for help is brave and not shameful, then you understand why Emma's story matters. Because children in danger are often trying desperately to signal for help in ways that require adults to truly see them, to trust those instincts that say something isn't right, and to act even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. The world needs more people like Vincent Santiago, people who look at 40,000 cars a day and still notice the one child pressing her hands against glass, asking silently for someone to save her. People who believe that protecting vulnerable people is always worth the effort, always worth the risk of being wrong, always worth caring about someone else's child as much as you'd want someone to care about yours.